Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of Susan Lopresti Wellness, Mind, Body, and Soul, the podcast where we explore the highs, the lows, and everything in between when it comes to woman's life, her health, and all aspects of navigating the midlife landscape. I'm your host, Susan Lopresti, and today I am super excited about my guest that I have on, Paula Wright. I met Paula on LinkedIn and we just started chatting, and a lot of what was going on in her life resonated with what was happening in my own. And I asked her to come on to this podcast and talk about her wonderful transformation that she's had over the last couple of years. Paula is an award-winning author, spiritual and wellness teacher, entrepreneur, and the creator of the Live Free process. Her mission is to help others live lives of freedom, abundance, purpose, and joy. Who doesn't want to be living that kind of a life? Paula is the co-author of The Keys to Living Authentically with Jack Canfield, the international best-selling author of the Chicken Soup for Soul series. She's also received the Editor's Choice Award for contributing to the book. She's received the 2023 Spiritual Teacher of the Year Award and Female Voice Award from WomELLE, Women's Empowerment Organization. There is no shortage of motivational speakers who can raise the hopes of an audience during the presentation. The hard work begins once each audience member is back home, back in their reality, living their daily routine of love, life, and career. This is where Paula's work takes hold and really stands out. It's through group coaching and workshops that Paula guides motivated people over every barrier on the mountain, leading with compassion, with love, and with humor. So without further ado, Paula, thank you for being here. I appreciate you, and welcome to my podcast.
Susan, thank you so much. It's such a privilege to be here, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Thank you.
I am as well to have you. So Paula, the reason that you originally caught my attention on LinkedIn was because of your story of working in corporate America. And tell me how and why you made that transition out of corporate America, and how all these opportunities and these doors just started to open for you, which I thought was a fabulous story. So let's begin from there.
Okay. Well, I quit my corporate job in 2020 to follow my passions and my calling. And I am someone who lived with chronic stress and anxiety and overwhelm for many years. I was a single parent. I dealt with work-life imbalance, and later caregiver to both of my parents. And to give the listeners just a little background on my work history, I spent many of my years working in nonprofit corporations in various leadership roles. And in my last position, I worked for a nationwide nonprofit, AARP, and I was the associate state director for community outreach in the Phoenix office. And it was for about the past 8-9 years before quitting. And I am someone who I felt like I was doing everything right, Susan. I gave everything to my family. I gave everything to my employers, the community, everyone. Yet I wasn't getting back to the extent that I was putting out. And I'm someone who I felt like I'd always been committed to personal growth and spiritual development, but something was blocking me. And I got to a point where I realized that I wanted so much more in my life. I wanted freedom. I wanted time to live my passions, but it just wasn't happening for me. And I didn't know why I was stuck, but I was stuck. And the turning point for me was in 2019 when both of my parents became ill. I'm an only child, and my father had been diagnosed with vascular dementia, and my mother had been his primary caregiver, and they lived in Tucson, which was about 2 hours away from me. And I received a call one day from their neighbor saying that, Paula, we're really concerned about both of your parents. Your dad seems to be getting worse, and your mom is driving all over the place. And she just seems to be going nonstop. And we can see the light on in her kitchen window at, midnight. She's working at her desk. And so I visited my parents all the time. My mom seemed to be okay. And when I called to check in on them, then it was always, we're doing good, we're doing fine. My mom was a great pretender. That's what I learned. And to make a long story short, my mother, she was very ill. She was having significant neurological issues. Her doctor suspected that she also had dementia, and she began to experience paranoia and delusional thinking and thinking people were breaking in the home. And, then I began to receive calls from the police department, saying, that your mom's called us out here and this is multiple, it's going on all the time. Nothing is happening. We believe she has dementia. So I ended up taking family medical leave. I took 3 months off from work to care for my parents and to get them moved to Phoenix to an assisted living community. And during that time, I really began to immerse myself in even greater self-care, but also inner work. And I remember it was during that time I received a call from a friend of mine who her son, just a few months prior, she had a young teenage son, and he wasn't doing well at all. He was suicidal and just having a really hard time. And when I, called to check on her 3 months later, she said he's doing amazingly well. And he's been doing this work with this woman, and it's just been life changing. And I said, well, tell me about this work. I want to know about it. And this work was called the Emotion Code Body Code work. And I immediately contacted this woman because I wanted to know, what this is. And the Emotion Code Body Code is it's a process of releasing trapped emotions and energy. And I'm someone who I'd always been committed to self-development, Susan, and spiritual growth. It's my passion. But as I said, something was blocking me. I wasn't manifesting my dream life that I'd worked so hard towards. So as I began to do this work and other work, neuro-linguistic programming, you may have heard of,
Yes,
began to shift for me. I mean, almost instantaneously, my world began to change, and it became clear to me that, first of all, I didn't miss going to my corporate job. This was the first time in a long time that I was able to wake up when I wanted to. And even though I was caregiving and it was hard, I didn't miss what I was doing. And I really just began to immerse myself in self-care. And Seattle had always been my soul place. And so when I went back to work, it became clear to me that it was time for me to let go of my corporate job. I was being called out of that world into a world of living my passions, living more of my passions. And so I ended up giving my notice, and I remember some of my colleagues being a little nervous when I did that. I had a high paying, corporate stable job, and and everything in the natural was saying, are you sure, the logical mind, are you sure you want to do this? But internally and in my spirit, it was, yes, you absolutely have to do this. And so one of my colleagues, I remember, came into my office after I sent my notice and said, are you sure you want to do this? And I said, absolutely. Absolutely. There's this whole world out here to live. There's so much living to do. So I quit, moved to Seattle. Seattle is my soul place. I have never been happier in my life, Susan. I wake up in the morning when I want to. I am surrounded by the most incredible nature. I am now living my passions. I'm now a coach and a spiritual wellness and transformation coach. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. My work feels like play because it's what I love doing, and it's just within 3 years, I've been received Spiritual Teacher of the Year award, Female Voice Award. I've been featured on the cover of three magazines. I've been the contributing author of a book with Jack Canfield called The
yes.
Keys to Authenticity. Audacity, which I received the Editor's Choice Award. I was invited to his home to be interviewed at his home, which I did last year on my birthday. And I was also invited to be interviewed on Lisa Nichols' show. And
Oh,
so what I manifested was so above and beyond anything I ever could have imagined or dreamed.
right,
But that's the result of doing the inner work. And that's when I learned, Susan, that it's the inner work that brings the outer changes in our lives and how important energy is and the impact on our lives.
right.
Yeah.
So, Paula, talk about the inner work. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so the inner work, as I said, the most I done inner work for many years because I felt stuck, yet I even though I felt like I was doing everything right, I was doing everything the world had told me to do. I gave, care for my family, gave everything to my employer. And I most of the work that I had done, it what I discovered is that I had a lot of limiting beliefs, and my beliefs really all went back to not feeling good enough. That was holding me back. I'm not good enough and not qualified enough, or even though on the outside, I was a successful person and people would love to have my job. Internally, I still had a lot of beliefs and not about not really being worthy and not being good enough. And the root of it for me, really, I think it went back to my childhood with my father, who he was a great father and he was a great provider. But my father never really told me the things that I needed to hear as a young woman about, being good enough and being pretty enough and being
Yeah,
loved and all of those things. And I know now it's because he didn't have the capacity to, because he didn't receive it.
right,
Okay. And so as a result of that, I had all of these limiting beliefs that I wasn't even aware of, that I had to work throughout the years. And then when I took the medical leave to care for my parents and
yeah,
began to do the emotion code, body code work, that's when I realized, Susan, that there's an energy that's attached to all of our emotions and our thoughts and our beliefs and our wounds and our trauma, which we all have.
yes,
And when we don't do the work to release those things, it becomes trapped. And that can hold us back because we are, our energy introduces us before we even speak. We're constantly attracting into our lives and repelling, if you will, based on our energetic frequency. And through the emotion code, body code work, I learned that there was a lot of energetic blocks as well. And I was able to release those. And I also learned that I was carrying a lot of generational trauma, which is something that I think most of us are, that we're not even aware of. We're carrying stuff that's not even ours. So it's emotions and it's trauma that our ancestors have dealt with that we inherited. And we're not even aware that we're carrying around this stuff as well. And through this process, man, talk about letting it go and quickly. It was
yeah.
very powerful, very powerful. And I really credit that, Susan, to really being the beginning of just things shifting very quickly.
And then things just started to open up for you, right? Opportunities and people coming into your life easily and effortlessly almost.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I learned the lesson for me is what I learned is that this is what it means to come into alignment. And we hear that term a lot and that
Yes.
word a lot, get into alignment, but many people don't understand what it means. And it means being in alignment in our thoughts, our minds, our hearts, our actions, our energy, our conscience. It all affects our energy. And when you come into alignment, when you do the inner work and you're releasing all of those things that are holding you back, all those layers and those limited beliefs, and you have the proper tools to manifest your desires, manifestation can become almost effortless. And it's called being in flow, where you're just being guided internally to the direction that you need to go, and the people that you're being needing to meet, and those connections are just they're just happening, like meeting you.
Right,
This is like,
exactly.
it's called being in flow. And I learned that, man, the world has taught us one way, but there's a whole nother way. And this is God's way. It's not God's will for us to struggle and just live in lack and kill ourselves with stress our entire lives. It is his will for us to come to a place of rest and to live our passions and to live abundantly and to live freely. That's God's will for each and every
Absolutely.
one of us. Yeah.
Well, I did corporate America as well for 27 years. And you're so caught up in this routine and this rat race of just going, going, going. I know, speaking for myself, I would never slow down to really get in touch with my feelings, even though I knew that what I was doing, I was miserable in doing. But it was all about, well, I need to make money. And
Yeah.
I felt that feeling of being trapped.
Mhm.
And at some point after 27 years, thankfully, they decided to let me go because I didn't have the wherewithal to do it myself. I was
Mhm.
stuck, right? So the first 2 weeks of being let go was devastating to me. And then I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to reinvent myself and do something that I probably always wanted to be, which was a health coach. And I one time sought out a spiritual advisor who told me, you are a healer,
Yes.
but your problem is that you choose to heal people or want to heal people who don't necessarily think or want to be healed. So you need to redirect your attention to people who are looking for what you have to offer. And so once I was let go, I decided, well, you know what? That made sense because I always loved health and wellness and I've never been happier.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Yes,
I
that's
mean, isn't it wonderful
that's
how those closed doors are really blessings in disguise sometimes.
opened up.
Yeah.
Yes, it opened up a whole new world of opportunity. If someone would have told me in 2021 that I would have a podcast and I would be doing these programs, and I would have never believed it.
I love it.
Never in a million
It's
years.
just what's waiting on the other side of that the limiting beliefs and the fear is so much greater than most of us can even imagine. It really, really is. If we can get
Yes,
to the point of just stepping out and getting beyond that fear and even being seen and being heard, because I even though I was in leadership positions, I'm somebody who's always been a little bit more comfortable behind the scenes
right.
and to work on, okay, I'm being called to be seen and be heard. And this is my time and I've got to work through this. But man, what's waiting for you, the blessings are just unbelievable.
Yes. And it's incredible that we have these limiting beliefs, and a lot of people will go through their whole entire life
Yeah.
never doing, not even realizing that they have them, first of all, and
Right,
never
right.
doing anything. And I didn't know I had these limiting beliefs myself until I was let go. And then the fear came in, well, now what do I do? And who's
Yes.
going to hire me at 61? And what you said about your parents, and I guess your dad, but I feel like it was more both of my parents, they never encouraged or built me up, me and my brother. And my brother's super successful today. He's a famous horse trainer, but we never got that encouragement. And it is from their own upbringing. My dad was one of seven, and my mom was one of 13 kids. So who had time to like really be nurturing them? And, so
Right,
it's
right.
it, and it
And they
just,
were busy trying to survive too,
yeah,
right? Just survive, yeah, and do the
yes.
best that they knew how. Yeah. So I
And
have that understanding now. I didn't understand it now, but I mean, back then, and it was difficult. But yeah, so those are the things that I had to work through. And
so,
I really do believe, Susan, that for most people, there's all kinds of limiting beliefs, related to age, as you said, oh, I'm too old for this, or, oh, I have to work a 9 to 5 job, or, money, so many limiting beliefs about money and living abundantly. But I think that for most people have limiting beliefs going back to worthiness, their own worthiness. I do believe it is for most people. Yeah. And
absolutely.
just being good enough. Yeah.
Yeah. I know you have a program, the Live Free process. So, how did that evolve and what is that all about?
Yeah, so the live free process, after I did this work and after my life just changed so quickly and so dramatically beyond anything I ever could have imagined, it was clear to me what the steps were that I had taken to make this happen and how different it was from what most of us had been taught. And so I developed this methodology on the process that you really need to take to live free. And living free means different things to different people, but it means, for me, it means freedom for our souls, number one. And our soul is our mind, our will, and our emotions. And I think that's what most people are looking for in life. They may not know it, but many are looking for it in material things and all different ways. And it's living your passions and your dreams and living abundantly. And because that abundance is our birthright, God created all of us to live abundantly. And so it's a 5-step process, and it's not linear. It's not, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it's a process. And the first part of it is really identifying your passions, because you're and making a commitment to follow your passions, because your passions lead to your purpose, and we're all created for a specific purpose on this earth, and your passions and your purpose are tied to your gifts, and your talents. And I see you're living yours right now, and you've always had a passion for wellness, and you're creative as well, and all of those things. And once you can tap into that and really begin to follow that, it really is going to lead to your best life. And I'll give you another example. When I was in high school, my senior year in high school, really getting ready to start college, I didn't even know what I wanted to do, but my parents had encouraged me to major in engineering because that's where the money was. And that was the most important thing for me, is to make as much money as you can, and then you'll be happy in life. And so that's what I majored in, my first year in college, first 2 years. And it didn't matter, Susan, that I could not do math. Math and I still can't. Okay.
Me
But
too.
that was the thing that I was supposed to major in because that's where the money was. And I failed. I mean, I failed. Being in those classes was like listening to a foreign language. Everything was just so foreign. My brain did not work the way theirs did. I wasn't processing anything. And I flunked out. I mean, I failed. I stopped going to a lot of the classes because it just didn't make sense to me. And so I quit college after 2 years, and I went back to Tucson and worked and partied for a while. And I ended up finishing college later, and I majored in what my original interest was, what was just came naturally to me, and that was in sociology. And so I ended up getting my degree in sociology and my master's in public administration. But following your passions is so important. It really, really is, because they're there for a reason and they lead to your purpose. And the second part of it is releasing those limiting beliefs. And as I said, we all have them, and they can be in the form of, you know, just not feeling good enough, or feeling like you're too old to live your passions or to manifest your dream life, or that you're never going to find love, or you have to work a 9 to 5 job, as I said, to earn money. They come in many forms, but it's so important to do the work to release those and reframe those beliefs. And through the process of neuro-linguistic programming, I mean, it's quick. People can do it very quickly these days. And you're reprogramming the brain. And the third is healing our emotional wounds and our trauma, which in turn is healing our energy. And I talked about how important that is. All of us have those wounds, and we really began to see it come to surface, I say, in 2020. And I say 2020 was the year that God shut the world down. He shut the world down and he said, your trauma has reached its limits, and yeah, and we began to see, that's when we began to see all the social justice protests, the Me Too movement, and we began to see it before then, but it really came to the forefront around that time. So many women who had suffered trauma, the racial justice protests, Black Lives Matter, so many people who are saying, we have experienced so much pain and we have experienced so much trauma and we are not taking it anymore. And I have in a place here in Seattle, I live in a community now where I'm surrounded by people who are there are many social justice advocates here, and I didn't know that when I discovered Seattle was my soul place. So many other things about it, but here this goes back to my passion of sociology, right? And I didn't know that now I'm surrounded by all kinds of people who are part of my tribe. They're
And
artists
that's
and
no
they're creative.
accident, right? No
That's
accident.
no, there you go. There you go, Sue. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm, so when
Yeah.
when you do this work, you're going to be led to your people as well. So, creatives, and I mean, it's like, man, it feels like coming home. So it's so important to do the work to release our wounds and our trauma, and that's childhood trauma. It could be from racial injustice, gender, sexual orientation, the loss of losing loved ones. I lost my dad. He did pass in 2020, and I lost many dear friends during the pandemic as well, and so many people as well. So many people are still dealing with the trauma and the loss of losing loved ones. And when we don't deal with that, when we don't process those emotions, we become stuck energy and stuck emotions, and they block us. They hold us back. Those are those invisible blocks that hold us back. So it's so important to do that work. And the fourth part of the process is to grow spiritually. I'm an ordained Christian minister as well, by the way, and I have been for about 20 years. And I say spiritually, it's important to grow spiritually. And I use spiritually as opposed to religion. And let me tell you why. I'm very intentional about that, because religion was really created by man to help people find God. But I must say it's become very controlling. It's become a tool for many different things. And many people have been harmed by religion. And we're living in a time where people are becoming freer, and they're becoming more spiritual. They want a deeper connection to God. This is another thing that we saw during the pandemic, at least in the Christian community, is many people leaving churches because they've discovered so much of what they had been taught was not true. And it wasn't serving them spiritually. They weren't growing. They didn't feel God. And so it's really important to grow spiritually. And we are spiritual beings having a physical experience on this earth. That is our root. And, in the wellness arena, I don't know if you've noticed this, but oftentimes it's, people really tend to focus on the physical aspects of wellness and mental wellness, but they leave out the spiritual part.
Yes.
And have you noticed that as well?
Yes.
Yeah. And you can't do that because it's all connected. The mind, the body, and the spirit is all connected. And if something is impacting one thing, it's going to impact the other. And so it's very important to go spiritually during these times. And we're all being presented with opportunities to grow. These are hard times. These are really, really hard times. And we're unfortunately, if we don't get the lesson, we're going to keep being presented with opportunities. So I really encourage people during this time to embrace the changes that we're in, that we're experiencing on the earth, and see it as an opportunity for growth, growing spiritually. And then the last part of the process is to not give up, because as you're doing this inner work and as you're pursuing your destiny, what you were created for, you're going to meet opposition. And the opposition can be in many forms. It can be in the form of our own self-doubt and fear about stepping out, as you mentioned. When you lost your job, it's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? But those are things that we have to work through. But it can also be in the form of problem people, problem situations that arise. And it's just so important to keep going and not give up. And that's why it's so important to have that spiritual basis and that connection, to really to see you through to the end. It really is. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
that's it in a nutshell, the 5 steps.
the five steps. Yeah. And so I've created a couple of courses,
Tell
online
us about
courses.
them. Okay.
Yeah, created a couple online courses. One is the Live Free process. And it really is a life-changing program where we talk about all of these things, and I give people the tools to really reprogram the mind and to work through, these limiting beliefs, and to really break through them, and to release the trapped emotions and the energy, and to really get in touch with their true desires. I talk a lot about the difference between our heart's desires and our mind's desires, because we all have, our deep desires in our heart, and they're called our heart's desires for a reason. God put them there, and they're meant to be. You just can't let go of them. You want this thing so badly, and if they're meant to be, they're going to come to pass, but you need the right tools to make them happen. And so one is the Live Free process. My other course is called Master the Law of Attraction Through Christ Consciousness. And I realized that through the work that I'd done, that getting in how do I say this? Let me say that I was invited to a workshop, what was just 2 years ago, by a coach who is a worldwide authority on the law of attraction. And she actually reached out to me, invited me to this training in Vegas. And I thought, and I heard about the law of attraction, but didn't know, the specifics or anything. But she just felt compelled. She kept reaching out to me to invite me to this training. And so I ended up going. And that was also life changing. What I realized during that training is that the principles of the law of attraction are biblical. every single every single aspect is biblical. But what I also realized is that these are principles. The principles of energy have been around since the beginning of time, since beginning with indigenous people, who it was just their natural way of connecting with God, and they understood, our connection to each other and our connection to the earth, and with Africans and Native Americans and Asian people. And I realized that as I took this course, that all of these things were things that I had been guided to do spiritually, but I didn't know that this was the law of attraction. And then I realized this is people are this is another piece of information that people are really, really missing. And that I was being called to teach. And Christ consciousness simply means to be conformed to the image of Christ, which is God's ultimate goal for us, is what we believe as Christians. And that means in our minds and our thoughts and our hearts. And once we come into alignment in that way, and we have these tools, the law of attraction, as I said, manifestation can become almost effortless. And even though the focus is on Christ consciousness, the principles that I teach are universal. So they apply to people of all faiths. And I invite all of your listeners, regardless of their faith, to really look into the program, because I think there's something that they can really can be life-changing. Yes.
Interesting. So tell me so let's go back to the Live Free process first.
Yes. Yes.
Is that a live program?
Yeah, so it's pre-recorded. Both courses are pre-recorded. And I'm glad you asked that, because this is something that I really gave a lot of thought to, and when I left my corporate job, Susan, I said, I've had enough stress for one lifetime. And I want I want to spend most of my time living and not working. And I know I'm being called to teach and to serve others and to share this wonderful information, but how can I do this and still maintain my time freedom, still be true to myself? And
Yes.
it was through online courses and it was through pre-recorded courses. And so that allows people to access them once they purchase it at any time and to complete them at their own leisure. Mhm. Yeah, so
So both
pre-recorded
of
online.
them, are they on your website?
Yes, yes, they are. They can
Okay.
access them at paulawrightofficial.com.
Okay. And I will put that in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
Um,
Awesome.
so someone who is in a position like we were, where we were working a corporate job, and it was more about the paycheck than the life calling of the job. What advice would you give someone who is feeling stuck in this position, but yet, like I mentioned with me, afraid to leave because of the paycheck, which was really affording me a lot? But what would be one piece of advice that you would give someone who was feeling stuck like this and really didn't know which way to turn?
So the one piece of advice that I would give is to look into neuro-linguistic programming
Okay,
and the emotion code and body code work, because it really comes down to releasing those limiting beliefs in our fear
right.
and reframing those beliefs. And the fear, it's natural. I mean, it's natural for us to fear that we've got stable jobs and it's what am I going to do? How am I going to survive? But really look into finding qualified practitioners to work with who can help them to release those fears and to release those beliefs and to shift their mindset to an abundance mindset so that they can really begin to see that there are unlimited possibilities about what they can do and where their money is going to come from, and to shift to that mindset. I really believe that that's the foundation of all of this.
Okay.
I really do. Yeah.
You are a yoga instructor, right?
Yes, I
So,
am.
did practicing yoga open up any opportunities as far as ridding you of limiting beliefs or have any impact or effect on you transitioning and opening up all these opportunities to you? Do you feel that yoga played a part in this? Because there's that spiritual component to yoga as well.
Yes, I do, Susan. I actually began practicing yoga on and off. I believe it's probably been about 10 years ago. And during the time that I was on family medical leave, for my parents, I really immersed myself in the practice. And yoga for me was such a great stress reducer, number one. It was a great
Yeah.
way for me to reduce my stress, and I was just, overwhelmed by everything. And it was also the beginning of me really understanding the connection between the mind, the body, and the spirit, and how important it was to meditate. And meditation was allowing me to quiet the mind so that I could hear from the spirit within and to hear that guidance and to be guided. And it's really important for us to shut out the noise, in order to hear, in order to be guided internally. And I would say that yoga was also the beginning of me realizing how interested I was in wellness and self-care practices and all. There's this whole world of things that I didn't even know about. I'd never been introduced to. And now I didn't know it was a passion of mine. And now I live in a community where I'm really able to embody, not just a community, I live in a city. I'm able to embody a wellness lifestyle. And so yoga was really the introduction of that for me. I'm surrounded by yoga studios and, healthy foods and marketplaces, and I now do acupuncture once a month. And
I think they need to come live over there because in New York, I mean, there's a lot of that. There is, but it's such a hectic lifestyle and busy and overcrowded. And When I go upstate New York, I feel a complete difference in my overall well-being. I become one with nature. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
definitely living in the wrong spot.
Yeah, it's Susan, I felt that way about living in Arizona because I commuted every day. I dealt with traffic every day and it's just and it's hot.
Yeah.
It's too hot to do anything. And here again, when you do this work and you're guided, you're going to be guided to not only your people, but your place, your soul place.
Yes.
And your soul place is a place that your soul is completely at home. Everything about it feels right to you. And I didn't even know half the things about Seattle that I did when I fell in love with it. And now it just keeps all of these other things. It's just like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I love this, but I'm surrounded by dogs now, and we walk. It's just
I love
so
it. I love it.
you're going to be guided. You're going to be guided to your place and your people. But the inner work is the key. That is
Right.
the absolute key part of it. Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
one other thing I wanted, when we spoke initially, you told me that you are an empath.
yes, I am. I am.
So tell me a little bit about that. Tell me
Yes.
about
Yes. So an empath is a highly sensitive person. Empaths are highly intuitive. We absorb other people's energies very easily. Most empaths are healers. We work in all different types of professions. I didn't know that I was an empath and probably until my 40s. And by the way, I left my corporate job at the age of 56 so that people know, and that was in 2020. But I didn't know that I never even heard the word empath until later in life. And so I struggled a lot as a child and as a younger person because I suffered because I didn't understand what I was dealing with. And I didn't have the ability to discern the emotion I was feeling was my own or someone else's. And that's part of the reason that I struggle with overwhelm and chronic stress. Not only was stressful being a single mom, my jobs were stressful, all of that, but I was very sensitive to everything that was going on around me. And I probably most of the jobs that I had, Susan, were probably the worst suited jobs for empaths. I know that now. I'm an entrepreneur now. I work by myself. I have peace, and it's perfectly suited for empaths. But so yeah, so we are gifted. Somebody asked me what my superpower was. It was a few weeks ago, and I said my superpower is being an empath. And our superpower is the one thing that we always thought was our greatest hindrance, and it was a thing that made us so different and maybe not worthy, and it gave us the greatest challenges in life, and it really is our greatest gift. And so after learning what I was and this gift that I have, I was really able to learn strategies to protect myself more, my energy, and I understood why self-care and wellness is such an important part of the way I need to live. But empaths are people who we are seers. We have the seer gift. Some people know us as clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, which means that we're highly in tune to what we know by what we hear, or sometimes we hear audibly, or we just know a situation. You don't have to tell us something. We just know that this is at the root of it. And what distinguishes us from each other is our source. And my source is the Holy Spirit, the Spirit within. And I've learned through meditation and through other practices to really, tap into that guidance. And everybody has that ability. But I've learned that this is this is a tremendous gift that I've had. And I even learned that, I was called out of my corporate job during 2020 because this is the time on the earth that a lot of empaths are being called to step into their calling.
Yeah.
Because we empaths are on sort of the opposite. How do I say this? We were created to balance a narcissistic world. Does that make sense? And
Yes,
we
it
are
does.
healers. Empaths are healers. And if there was never a time that we are needed and we're being called to step out to help heal the world, it's now. So many empaths are being, reshifted and awakening, if you will, to really step into what God created them to be and to do. And so that's part of my calling now, is to help people shift into a whole new way of living, to let go of the old programming and the limiting beliefs and step into who God created you to be, and to live free and to live abundantly. And, as I said, Susan, like you've never been happier. We talked about this before. We wake up in the morning now when we want to spend most of my time doing the things that I love. I am living in a place where I feel like it's heaven on earth, and everybody has that place. And it's more than one place. It could be more than one place, but that's where God wants you to be. And that's where I'm trying to help people get to, because I just believe that so many of us are suffering so much needlessly because we don't have this information. We don't have these tools. And so my passion now is just to provide this information to people. And it's just so much easier than what we've been taught.
Yes, I love it. I was attracted to everything that you talked about on LinkedIn when I was looking at over your profile, and I was just like, oh yes, this person is my person.
Yeah, yeah. And let me tell you, I feel the same way about you. From the first time that we talked, I knew that you were also an empath. I don't know if you know that.
I,
Do
I
you?
think I think that I am as well.
Yes, you
Yes.
are.
I don't know how to manipulate it, or I feel like sometimes it takes over me in a way, and I let
Yeah,
other people's feelings really get to me, and I need to
yeah.
learn, I think, boundaries with that. Why do you think I am?
I just know you are. I could just feel you, and I just our connection to each other, and I
Yes.
just knew you were from the moment that we spoke. And you said something earlier about someone telling you, I think, that you're attracting people
Yes.
that don't want to be that don't
Yes.
want to be helped. That's another that's another challenge that most empaths have had,
Yes.
because of who we are. People are drawn to us, and people who aren't the healthiest are also drawn to our
Yes.
light. So
Yes.
that's something we have to work through as well. But I know that you are a healer. I know that you are a beautiful, creative person. I know that you've always been very sensitive, and you've always had great empathy for other people, and great compassion for others. And you have a great creative gift as well. And you've stepped into your calling when
Yes.
when you left your corporate job. You stepped into your true work. And I don't know how long ago that was for you, but
It's
I just
2021 when I was
oh, okay. So
up.
it was just recent for you
Yes.
too. Yeah, yeah, but you're just getting started. You
Yes.
got you got some great things coming. That's what I see for you.
Thank you,
You're
Paula.
just getting started. Yeah,
I
you're
feel that way as well. I
yeah,
really do. I feel that way as well. And like we talked about earlier, the limiting beliefs that are generational, without a doubt. My dad was born in the Great Depression of 1929. So his mentality was always lack, not enough,
yes,
not enough,
yes,
and never enough money. And you hear that over and over and over again, it becomes part of your fabric. That's
that's
who
right.
you become.
That's
And
right.
and I have a lot of work still left to do to eliminate those
Yeah.
beliefs because they are deeply ingrained in
Embedded. They are. They
us.
are. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because, my parents grew up in the South. They grew up poor. They grew up with tons of siblings, just like your parents.
Yes.
They had lots of kids, and there was a lack mentality, as well. And my parents became very successful real estate broker in Tucson. He was a military veteran and everything. But my mother to this day still has that lack mindset, scarcity mindset. You hold on to everything. And when she began to get ill and I had to step in and take over, and I had to clear out the house that they've been in for like the past 20 years, Susan. And I had to hire someone to help me. But that's when I really discovered that my mother's that mindset led to hoarding for her. And because you hold on to, when you think that
Yes.
there's not enough, you hold on to it. And hoarding, hoarding can lead to breakdowns, nervous breakdowns. And that's what it ended up with her. But so it was just such an awakening to me. It just, because they started with nothing and they became successful, yet my mother's mindset was still a scarcity mindset. And I didn't have that awareness until they got sick and I had to step in and really see, you what was going on.
Yes.
And so it's so important. It really is. And I began speaking. I'll share this one last thing. I learned from a friend. She said that she began speaking every morning when she got up. Today, I experience heaven on earth. Today, I experience heaven on earth. And I started doing that 2 weeks ago. I said, I'm going to start speaking that every morning. I'm going to start affirming that because we're going to receive whatever it is that we're putting out there. Today, I experience heaven on earth. On the second day, Susan, I received an unexpected check in the mail for over $7,000. Do you hear me? I mean, totally. It was a class action lawsuit that I had no clue about, didn't know I was involved in it, nothing. And yeah, a check for over $7,000. So, we live in an abundance universe, and it's time for people to claim that
Yeah.
and really begin to live the abundant life, because that is God. And abundance is more than just money. Let me say that, because there are many wealthy people in this world who are absolutely miserable. And there
Yes.
are so many people who are poor and are full of joy. Happiness is an inside job, but abundance is about, I mean, it includes money, but it's so much more. It's fulfillment, it's joy, it's peace, it's doing what you love, it's having freedom and time to live your life. And it's all of that. And that's God's will for every single person. And so when we get in alignment, do this inner work and get in alignment, manifestation really can become almost effortless. It really, really, really
I
can.
love that. Do you
Yeah.
think we should end right there on that high note? Because it's
Yeah, why not?
Paula, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on. Please give my audience your website address again so that they
Yes, it's PaulaWrightOfficial.com. And they can follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram is also Paula Wright Official as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Paula, thank you so much. Everyone, thank you so much for being here with me today. I appreciate each and every one of you. Until the next time, be well, stay happy, and bye for now.